This doll has been growing her bangs out centuries before TikTok could make it go viral. Welcome to Ladies Fright. I'm your host, Joan. Trigger warning: child death. There is a cultural belief in Japan that to fight off the heat, you should make yourself shiver in fear. This belief, along with the celebration of Obon, a holiday when the spirits of past ancestors visit the mortal world, being held in August, is why Japan's spooky season is in the summer. I did a poll to see what Japanese legend you wanted to see covered, and Okiku won, which is perfect because her story is very similar to a recent TikTok that has been making the rounds, and a rumor of a doll collector we have opinions about. But you will have to wait until the end to hear more about that. If you go to the north of Japan to the island of Hokkaido, at the Meninji Temple in the town of Iwamizawa, you will find a shrine with a traditional Ichamatsu doll, standing 40 centimeters tall with a red kimono and with dark black eyes. Though, the most noted feature of this doll is her hair. Just visiting the doll once may not clue you into what is so special about her. You'll have to come back a couple of times, and maybe you will see how much her hair has grown. This is Okiku, and from what I can tell, she is considered to be the most haunted doll in Japan. Her story starts all the way back in the 1900s. To celebrate the settlement and the colonization of Hokkaido, there was the Sapporo Exposition, which was very similar to the World's Fair and was to show how rapidly the settlement modernized its agricultural industry. It was held August 1st to the 21st in 1918. On the 15th day of the exposition, a 17-year-old boy named Ikachi Suzuki spotted the perfect doll for his beloved younger sister. He saw the doll I described with a haircut called an okappa, or a bob cut to the chin length with blunt straight bangs. He brought it home to his sister, Kikuko. She was 2 or 3 years old and loved the doll deeply, naming the doll Okiku. She would play with her during the day and sleep with her during the night. The doll rarely left the toddler's side. She was even there to comfort little Kikuko as she got sick with a cold. She became the girl's comfort when the cold got worse and worse. Some accounts say that it was pneumonia, others say it was yellow fever, but whatever it was, the doll was even there when she took her last breath, a very short year after the doll was gifted. In Japan, it's typical to add items the person loved with them when they are cremated. However, there are some restrictions to this, such as anything that would interfere with the cremation process. This includes items which will not burn or hazardous materials. I guess for one of these reasons, the doll was not included in Kikoku's cremation. Many Japanese homes will have a shrine which represents those who've passed on. You may have their ashes, a photo of the family member, or trinkets the person loved when alive. Family members and loved ones who enter the home may make an offering of lighting a stick of incense and a quiet moment of reflection dedicated to the deceased in front of the small shrine. Because Okiku was not put to rest with Kikuko, she was placed as a memento on the altar. When you are grief-stricken, sometimes the little details pass you by. The family would pray at the home shrine every day, but it took them a good while to notice that the okappa hairstyle of the doll was now down to her shoulders. The story then jumps ahead almost a full 2 decades to 1938, where due to Japan entering World War II and Ikichi getting conscripted, the family all moves to different parts of the country. For some reason, they could not take Kikoku's ashes or her doll and surrendered them to the local Meninji Temple. I'm sorry, what? A time skip is crazy to me. Some version of the story suggests that the family began to believe the doll was possessed by Kikoku's spirit, and that is why her hair began to grow. If you thought the soul of your daughter was in a doll, would you not do whatever you could to take the doll with you? The family was said to have not noticed her hair growing a few months after Kikoku's death. So, am I supposed to believe this family just kept this incredible doll to themselves for so long? Like, they had this doll that they thought had the spirit of their beloved child in it, and it miraculously grew hair. Wouldn't you be telling people? I would be telling people. I would be like, hey, Bill, look at me. Do you see this doll? Its hair's growing. It's crazy, right? Lindsay, hey, over here. Come over here. Get over here, Lindsay. Have you met the spirit of my daughter who is trapped in this doll? Her name is Okiku. Yes, she does have lovely hair. Let me tell you more about it. I did see some retellings that say the spirit wasn't peaceful. The house's lights would flicker, banging would be heard coming from inside the walls, and the family members said they would have nightmares. All of this activity would intensify closer to the dates of the little girl's birthday and the anniversary of her death. Anyway, the family basically asked the monks to babysit their daughter's spirit. When they eventually returned 7 years later, the hair of the doll has grown down to its waist. The family said, "Hey, why don't you just keep that?" And the monks agreed. To care for the doll, it is said the monks cut her hair once a year, and each year it grows back to the length it was the year before. There's another version of this story which somehow involves even more bizarre ghostly encounters than the previous tale. We know this adaptation comes from Koike Takehiko. Takehiko was a Kaiden Kenkoika, which we would think of as a ghost story researcher or a paranormal researcher. On August 6th, 1962, an article of his was published about a father named Sukesichi buying a doll for his daughter, Kyoko. After Kyoko's death, her father leaves the home to go work at the local coal mines of Karafuto Island. Because he was going to find work, he was not allowed to bring his daughter's ashes or her doll with him, which honestly makes a little more sense than the last story. According to this version, the father didn't notice any hair growth from the toy, and the surrendering happened in 1958 instead of 38. Once Sukesichi's possessions were given to the monks, they decided to store them in a box to keep them safe. 3 years later, and the father had still not been able to return home. However, one night, a monk in the temple had a dream of Sukesichi appearing beside him on his futon, completely drenched. The man being soaked in the middle of the night was not odd enough. His request certainly would throw anyone off. "Cut my daughter's hair." The monk believes there is something to this message, but knows he's not going to be able to cut the hair from ashes. So he figures the best thing to do would be to cut the hair of the girl's doll. When he opens the box, he finds the doll's hair has grown very long. The father never returned, leaving those who hear the version of this story to believe Sukesichi met his end, assumed to be by water, the same night the monk had a vision of him. Okay, so I'm sure you're thinking, why doesn't someone just measure the hair after the cut and see if it does grow? Great idea, but her keepers don't allow anyone to touch Okiku outside of her annual trim in order to respect the spirit inside her. Okay, what about taking photos over time and seeing if there is a difference? Well, visitors are also not allowed to take photos either. So there is not really a permanent way to gather evidence to test this claim. I saw in one resource that the monks did not cut the doll's hair until it reached 25 centimeters long, and that experts said the hair grows at the rate of a 3-year-old child's hair. This is one place that I saw any numbers. I'm unsure who these experts are or what measurements they're looking at. Also, and this is based on a cursory Google search and not a deep dive, I'm pretty sure you cannot determine someone's age based on the rate of hair growth. The hair is usually the highlight, the claims of Okiku, but there is one more thing. Her mouth appears to open and she has teeth. Yeah. Some people say at times the doll's mouth appears to be opened and she has little teeth up in there, which, not gonna lie, hate that a lot more than the hair thing. What does she need to chew? Through my research of Okiku, I began to notice a lot of places talking about how she, as a doll, was not disposed of properly and is most likely why she is now haunted. This got me to wonder how the Japanese view dolls in general and what was their significance in history and culture. We should start with the word itself. The Japanese for doll is ningyo, which translates to human-shaped. This translation alone shows how connected humans are to these figurines. There is a belief in Japan that because the objects are shaped like a person, you should not mistreat them, meaning the doll should be shown the same respect as a person when they are no longer able to be loved by their owner. Dolls may be moved to be displayed on a shrine, like in the Okiku story, or they may even have their own funeral. I'm not fully sure why people believe Okiku was not dealt with properly, unless it is just because she was not cremated with the little girl. The Japanese have many different styles of dolls, as well as different purposes the dolls are said to fulfill. Their history with the culture goes all the way back to around 400 BCE in the Joan period, with figurines of humans and animals made from clay called dogu, though the most famous connection to the culture comes from Lady Murasaki's novel, The Tale of Genji, which I should also mention is the first novel ever written. The 11th century work is about the lives of courtiers in the Heian period. Included in these descriptions of lifestyles from this period were how dolls were used for both play and protection. Aside from girls playing with dolls, women would make dolls to act as protecting charms for their children and grandchildren. Dolls were also used in rituals. Made from paper or wood, a human-shaped figure could be used for protection from evil spirits. One would attach their misfortune to the dolls, known as a hitogata, which, according to my husband, also means human-shaped. And then the dolls would be either burned or sent into a body of moving water, like a river or the ocean. The Japanese still have a tradition of loving dolls, even having a dedicated festival to them known as Hina Matsuri, which dates back to the Edo period, which was between 1603 to 1868, and is still celebrated to this day. The festival includes dolls dressed as the emperor and empress, along with the royal court, and elaborate displays can be found throughout the country on March 3rd. This is celebrated to ensure happiness and health in girls' futures. Dolls were also used in an attempt to better relationships between America and Japan in the 1920s. Reverend Sidney Gulick was disturbed by the Immigration Act of 1924, which banned all Japanese from entering the United States. The Reverend had spent his quarter of a century mission over in Japan and had become fond of the people and culture. He believed to broker peace amongst the two nations, it had to start with children. He began a campaign to collect money and send American dolls to children in Japan as a gift of friendship, and formed the Committee of World Friendship among children. Now, we know this didn't end up with the greatest friendship the world had ever seen. Years later, Japan, being left out of the West imperialism after World War I, would attack Pearl Harbor and would be the catalyst for the United States joining World War II. The American government would then put American citizens of Japanese heritage into internment camps, seizing any wealth or property they had, all because of their heritage. However, back when the doll exchange began in 1927, it felt very successful. Known as the ambassador dolls, many of the American dolls sent over were blonde-haired and blue-eyed, and arrived in Japan just in time for Hina Matsuri. These dolls were called blue-eyed dolls in Japan. In Japanese culture, there is the practice of giri, which is the obligation to pay back a social debt. Japan reciprocated Gulick and the committee's gift by artfully crafting dolls which were designed based on different cities, regions, prefectures, or colonies of Japan. In total, there were 58 dolls. Since Japan received the blue-eyed dolls on a holiday, they wanted to return the favor and rushed their production so they would be able to arrive in America by Christmas. Today, the dolls can be found in several different museums throughout the country. The most famous museum with a collection being the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. A bit unrelated, just because I found it both scary and cute, there is a town in Japan that just has dolls who are meant to look like former neighbors who have left either due to passing away or moving. Nagoro is known as the Village of Dolls. The dolls are all creations of Tsukimi Ayano, who started to make the dolls back in 2002. According to the blog I read, the village residents were 20 people and over 300 dolls. All the dolls have cataloged names, ages, personalities, and backstories. Now, I will say I only find this scary because I'm not a fan of dolls in general. I'm sure for anyone who likes them, this would be a fun tourist destination. Now let's talk about the specific type of doll Okiku is. Okiku is known as an ichimatsu doll, the name originally coming from a kabuki actor in the 18th century. This may mean they originally represented older men, since all kabuki actors are men. However, by the 19th century, they were known to look like children. They are distinguished by their accurate proportions, flesh-colored skin, glass eyes, and with joints which allow the doll to wear clothes and be posed. This was also the type of doll that was crafted as the Friendship Doll Exchange dolls. The heads of these dolls are created from a paste made of paulownia, wood dust, and glue known as toso. It is then covered with layers of white pigment made from crushed oyster shells called gofan. The hair is real human hair, which are long strands that have been folded over. The folded end is then glued into small holes in the scalp. This brings us to the going explanation of why the doll's hair may appear to grow, outside of the paranormal, of course. With factors like time, seasonal changes, and the material the head is made of being affected by moisture in the air, the growth may be more the doubled over hair is just slipping. The wood used for the head is hygroscopic, or takes on water from the air. Hokkaido's weather is very wet. They have snowy winters and rainy summers. When wood takes on water, it expands, and when it dries, it contracts, meaning those little pinholes in the doll's scalp are also changing size. Over time, the size changes would wear down the adhesive holding the hair strands in place. This would allow the hair to look double the length from when it was originally bought. The same logic of expansion and contracting could also explain why the doll's mouth may appear to be open at times. Though, even if the doll's hair was double the length we may have originally thought, that would not explain how each year it gets a haircut. It would have to run out of hair eventually, right? Well, there's a possible explanation for that. The haircut doesn't happen. There's a travel blog which has a conversation of a visitor talking to the wife of the priest, who also happens to be the caretaker of the doll. The traveler explains how he heard the girl who owned the doll died of illness, to which the caretaker says this was the first time she had ever heard of that. The traveler then asks if Okiku's hair is still growing, and according to the blog post and translation, her response is the following, quote, "Well, it's a doll from the Taisho era, so it's quite old. I don't know about the past, but in the 30 years since I married into the family, it seems almost unchanged to me," unquote. Now, does she come out and say the hair growing is untrue? No, but we can guess that if something hasn't changed in appearance in 30 years, it would not be getting a haircut. I do feel I should mention that people tend to not be fearful of Okiku like they are of other Western doll hauntings like Peg, Robert, or Annabelle. Okiku is not thought to be haunted by an evil spirit, but that of a young girl. So people tend to take pity on the story and the spirit rather than fear her. She's kept in a box because she's over 100 years old, unlike some other dolls we know. This is also why I'm not surprised she's not allowed to be investigated by paranormal hunters. She is a historical artifact at this point and needs to be handled with care that I don't know if paranormal investigators are up to the task of. When it comes to the no photography rule, it's less that you can't photograph her and more that you can't photograph anywhere. In many Japanese temples, photography is permitted outside, but not within the main areas of worship, so less of a mystery and more of a cultural standard. Looking into this story, it reminded me a lot of a doll I've been hearing a lot about recently. No, not her, this one.
Well, it looks like real hair. So this doll was bald.
Like it had like really short hair, and now its hair's like really long. Mama. And like,
there's a spirit.
and we just put hair gel in it, like a little bit.
Okay, well take Chucky and go, please.
Hey.
Hannah the Horrible covered this, and she brought up the point of priming, which I have to say she does do a bit of.
And I'm a little worried to do this today because my dad passed away 25 years ago today, so I don't really want to like ruffle any feathers with anything, but I'm gonna set it up.
In mentioning her dad passed and the caption keeping the audience on the lookout for orbs, it sets the narrative up to be paranormal. For those of you who don't know or need a reminder, priming in this sense is when you are exposed to one thing and it affects how you react to the next. Her talking about death and orbs primes you to think the doll is going to do something with those things. When asked to open the doll's head to see if it would help give an answer to why the doll's hair was growing, she gave this reason.
And people are saying to cut the doll open. Like, my daughter loves this doll. So I'm not gonna cut it open, but I'm a little freaked out. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit startled.
Okay, but if it's so important to your child, then why say this days later?
Alton reached out and offered to buy the doll. And I'm probably most likely gonna take him up on the offer because that would be really cool for her soul to live on there, where she can be monitored.
Well, I think I may know the reason.
If anybody could let Matt Rife know that I still think he's cute and I'm happy that we can share a doll together.
Ew, no, not that clip.
I'm gonna set it up. Also, I'm just gonna say, if you guys haven't seen the video where I'm like telling about my dog that needs surgery and you do feel compelled to keep my dog alive or help me keep my dog alive, check the video out because it would mean a lot if my GoFundMe was, shared a bit.
Look, I don't know if this was a ploy to get money, and honestly, I feel sad if it was. I will say, I looked in the description, comments, and bio and saw no links to the GoFundMe. There's a possibility that she no longer needs it, and then I guess good for the dog at this point. I'm gonna remind everyone of my policy here on Ladies Fright. Do not harass or brigade anyone mentioned here. If I find out that you have, I will block you on every platform I can. Hannah said it best as to why this doll story is hard to believe.
I don't find this that creepy because we don't have any reference photos of the doll from when they first got her. So even from a few weeks ago, so I'm sorry, but inanimate objects are not going to just grow hair. I think this was blown way out of proportion. It got so viral, and now the creator then in follow-up videos is seeing orbs, and people are saying the doll moves in some of the other videos. And of course you're seeing and feeling all this weird stuff now because it's confirmation bias, because you think you have a haunted object. But does she really believe that? We'll talk about that. So let's just say ghosts exist for a second, just hypothetically. Let's just say they do. A doll, I think even if this was possessed by a ghost or a demon, they still can't grow hair. Objects are, again, if ghosts are real, objects can be used by a ghost theoretically, like it's a vessel to live in. The thing itself is not alive. Like it's just kind of using whatever it's in to exist in that place. So this doesn't really go with paranormal logic anyway. Like if this were a thing, we'd also be able to find possessed dolls with their nails growing, or possessed dolls that grow in height. You get it.
I would also like to thank Hannah for pointing out this TikToker who gave a technical explanation of what is happening.
Hair on a reborn baby grow. For those of you that don't know, there is a viral video going around with a lady who claims that her daughter's reborn is growing hair. Now, I'm a reborn artist and I'm going to put forward my theories as to why this might be happening. Now, when I am rooting the hair, you will see this is around the length of the hair that I am rooting. I use a needle to punch it into the head. Now, the hair will catch in this notch and it will get pushed in all the way up to around here. So around this much hair is actually going inside the head. And on this head, I have mono-rooted the hair, which means I use one hair per hole. But on a lot of reborns, and I think on the reborn in that video, there is multiple hairs per hole. Once a full head has been rooted, you actually glue it in from the inside. Now, this is quite difficult to show on camera as it doesn't really want to pick up, but you can see how much hair is inside that head. Now, I have glued that down, so technically, this hair shouldn't come out. However, if someone were to hold this a lot, rub it a lot, that kind of thing, this hair might break off at this root rather than be physically pulled out. Once the hair has broken from the outside, it should still, in theory, be glued in from the inside. However, if that glue is old or if you have used a lot of hairs per hole, it may be that not every hair is completely secured down on the inside. In which case, if there again is a lot of handling of the doll, over time that hair might start to work its way out. And then of course, if it is touched or pulled, you can then pull that hair out longer. I don't think there is anything supernatural or concerning going on. And no, it is not normal for reborns to have hair that grows longer. If you have any questions or any other theories, let me know in the comments.
Huh. Where have I heard this explanation before? When wood takes on water, it expands, and when it dries, it contracts, meaning those little pinholes in the doll's scalp are also changing size. Over time, the size changes would wear down the adhesive holding the hair strands in place. It is fun to look back in history and see if we can find possible explanations for today's mysteries. I'm really glad my audience picked Okiku, and we were able to apply her story to another centuries later and halfway around the world. It's kind of fun how beliefs in the paranormal can be so different culture to culture, yet still so connecting. But what do I know? I'm just some lady talking about some frights. Thank you all so much for joining, and thank you for picking this. This was a lot of fun. Every once in a while, I think I am going to either put up a poll of things for people to pick or just, openly ask, like, what are some ideas? What do you want us to look into? This was a lot of fun. I know it was a little bit different with my last video and going over some fictional stories, and I still want to do that, but I also do want to go over these real paranormal hauntings. I don't know if you want to call it that, like what's real, what's not real. But yeah, it's still just looking into the narrative of hauntings that people claim to be real and that are not purposely fictional. I think is a lot of fun. But yeah, I hope you just stick around with me and get some spookies and stuff like that. I would love to know if you've had a spooky summer. I said before, Japan reserves their spooky season for the summer. And we do too, in a certain way. Like a lot of slasher movies in the 80s came out in the summer. And a lot of them are based on like summer camps and like prom nights and things like that we associate more with the summer than like purposely in like the Halloween, like fall season. So yeah, let me know if you've had a spooky summer and why was it spooky? But yeah, that being said, I'm going to head out. But before I do, I just want to offer you 10%. 10% of what? I hear you asking? That's a great question. So here at Ladies Fright, I like to offer you 10%. You could be 10% more likely to cut yourself bangs, and they really work for you this time. Or you could be 10% less likely to have 3 perfect hair days in a row. Or you could be 10% more likely to find your neighbors have been replaced with dolls. But you won't know that until you like, comment, subscribe, or share. It could be 40% if you do all 4 because it builds on itself. That being said, I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!